right. Leah, you can go ahead and share your screen and we can begin.
All right, thanks everyone for joining. For those of you that filled out the poll, we appreciate that. Here, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. So today we're going to do a deep dive into the onboarding feature. I did want to introduce Brandon and Thomas that were also on the call with me. Brandon is one of our training and optimization specialists. Some of you might already know him from your implementation trainings. He's going to be running the QA session during our presentation today. And Thomas Adesso is here as well. He's an operations specialist. And I know some of you also might know him from your forms trainings during implementation a while back. My name's Leah Sanborn. I'm a training specialist today, and I'll be leading us through the onboarding deep dive. So today we're going to cover a quick summary. We're going to define the onboarding feature. Then we'll move into creating and customizing a welcome message for our providers to view or to receive. After that, we will take a peek at what your provider will experience on their side. Then we'll move over to our editor section and we'll deep dive into how to customize the data points that you'll be able to request from your providers. And then finally, we're going to cover our reporting options as well as what the different icons mean that are related to onboarding. And then we'll open up the rest of our presentation to an open QA session. During the presentation today, though, feel free to put your questions in the QA session at the bottom of your screen at any point during the presentation. Just note, we might not answer some of those until the very end of the presentation. Right, so I'll go ahead. I'm going to switch over to OneView and we'll get started with a high-level overview of onboarding. All right, so now that you can see my the OneView platform here, I'm logged in under our Modio University team. And I want to just give a brief description of what the onboarding feature is. Onboarding is a welcome message that you guys can customize and send over to your providers. Your providers will then receive that message. They'll be prompted to create a login, and then they'll be able to fill out different data points that you request. And as your providers fill in those data points, the data will automatically fall in the provider's profile. So essentially, the provider is doing a little bit of that initial work for you.
Awesome. So, Leah, first question I want to ask regarding onboarding is, and I also see this a lot, can we customize that initial message? So a lot of times in implementation, I know we have a default message that gets provided, but if I have specific things I want to add, where do I go to customize what my provider reads?
Oh, that's a great question, Thomas. So the way that you can customize that message is from this message button in the upper right-hand side. You can also access it from any of your provider profiles here by clicking on the envelope, but I'm going to just start right here. And when I click the message button, it brings me to this screen here. And in this section, I've got a subject and a message line. If I want to make any edits or changes, I can click this edit button here. And when I click the edit button, I'll have full access to add my subject and my message, whatever I want to type to my providers. Subject line, most times people write something like welcome to, and then your organization's name there. And after that, the message part, you can describe that something along the lines of we're using this credentialing platform called OneView, what your providers can expect, why you're asking for the data, and so on. You can also put your contact information at the end so that your providers would know that it's coming directly from you. Once you're done making any edits or changes, you can hit save. An important thing to note is that this is a team level feature. So when you make the change here and you decide to send it to your providers, they'll all receive that same welcome message.
Fantastic. That was actually a question I was going to ask for the group as well. Now, one that I will jump right into is I see that file attachment right there. So what exactly can I use that for?
Another good question. So the choose file option is a place for you to attach one document for your providers to view. An important thing to note would be this is This file is intended to be like a read-only document for your providers, maybe a welcome message or an HR document for them to review. It is not integrated with DocuSign. So this is different from our Forms tab over here. So this file should be something, it should not be intended to be signed, filled out, or returned. It would just be a read-only document for your provider to hang on to. All
Awesome, thank you.
right. The next step when you're setting up your onboarding invitation and you've got your subject and message all set would be to decide who to add whose email to send it to. You can add emails by using the green plus sign at the bottom here. So if you notice, look, if you watch this gray box, as I click the green plus sign, you can see my provider emails popping up there. You can send as many as you want at the same time. This feature will allow you to free text in here. However, I don't recommend doing it. It gets a bit glitchy. If there's even like a space bar in the wrong spot, it might not send to the right provider. So when you're adding those, just make sure you're using that green plus sign to add the email addresses.
Now, what do the red emails indicate within my list here?
Whenever you see a red email here, that indicates that that email address that's in the provider's profile is not valid. So in this case, I can see somebody used the placeholder email option. It ends in modio.email. It's not a valid email. And the way that you can correct that is by going to this provider's profile, and under the personal info section, there's a work email field, and that work email field is what's linked to this feature. So just update their email to wherever you want to send it in that work email field.
Cool, thank you.
Yep.
Now, we talked a lot about customization and how we can do it on our end as coordinators, but what exactly is a provider going to see when they receive that invitation that we've customized?
All right, perfect question. So once you hit send, your provider will receive this message. And I'm going to show you a couple of screenshots that detail how it views on their end. So I'm just going to X out of here. And then I'm going to go to our support page. You all have access to this as well. So if I click support, it's going to take me to this list of tip guides. And there is a tip guide for provider onboarding down here. Y'all are all welcome to view this or even share it with your providers if they wanted to see it. But I'm going to click on provider onboarding. It's going to take just a second to load. But slide number 5 has really good screenshots of what this is going to look like on your provider end. So this first screenshot is what that welcome message looks like to your provider. It'll have your logo here rather than ours. This is just our demo team if I was sending it from here. You've got the body of the message, and then your provider will be prompted to click start here. Once they do that, their page will look something like this. They'll create a password, agree to terms and conditions, and then claim their profile. Once they've claimed their profile, they can then log into OneView, and they'll be prompted to fill in different data points that you're requesting. This is a sample of what those data points could look like, although it's fully customizable for you and your team.
So that was going to be where I wanted to go next. We've already kind of gone over customizing the message, but kind of the big draw of the onboarding feature is getting the exact information that I need for my organization and probably for all the other coordinators interested here as well. So how can we actually customize and tailor list what we ask the providers to send to us?
All right, great. So I'm going to close out of this tip guide and navigate over to this section where you can alter those data points. So I'm going to X out of here. One cool thing about customizing those data points is that it's a team level feature. So I'm going to customize the data points from one of my provider profiles. But once I do it in one profile, it will waterfall down and apply to all my providers on my team. So the way you can get there is by just clicking on any provider's profile. I'm just going to use, let's see, I'm going to use Dr. Jennifer Parker here. So I'm going to click on her name. I'm going to go all the way down to summary. And then from summary, I'm going to use my edit button on the upper right-hand side. And that brings me to the onboarding editor. The onboarding editor is where you can view what it looks like on your provider side. So you can collapse these sections and kind of see what data points you're requesting right now. But if you click the if you click the editor button, that's where you can make all the edits or changes. So now each field has their own edit button along as each section. And from there, if I wanted to make edits or changes to this data point, I'm going to click right here and you'll get a pop-up. There's a few different checkboxes here that you have the option to change. You can make a field required, and that means your provider will have to fill that out before they can hit save and continue. You could also make a field read only. And if you do that, that means they'll be able to view that field, but not make edits or changes. Or you can leave both of these unchecked, and then that field will just be enabled. And that means it's kind of like an optional field. So they can fill it in or they wouldn't have to. If we move down, there is a lot of customization here. I'm just going to hit cancel, but I can collapse these different sections and I can decide what data points I want to request from my providers. And I've seen clients go about it with different goals. Sometimes clients say, I want to request all the data that I can from my providers. I just want to see how much I can get them to fill in. Whereas other ones say, hey, I don't know if my provider is going to spend more than 15 minutes on it. I'm just going to ask for the most important data points. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just up to you and your organization, whatever is best for you. But here I've collapsed the different sections and there is a shortcut. If you decide you don't want to collect any data from a certain section, rather than going through each individual data point, I'll just use education as an option or as an example. I can use the red X to remove that entire section. So I'll hit the X. I'm going to hit disable. And now my sections renumber themselves, but I can still find education and training at the bottom here, but it has a little I with a line through it. That just means it's not active right now. And I could reactivate it by hitting that green plus. So if I hit the green plus, it says enable, and there it's back. It'll renumber itself and there it's back. And you can toggle back and forth from the viewer to the editor to see what it looks like from your provider's view. So if I had made some edits and changes and I just wanted to take a glance and see what it looks like to your provider, I can switch over here. And now I am in my Dr. Jennifer Parker's profile, so I can see the data that currently exists in her file, but I can also see the blank spots, all the pieces that I'm requesting. Anything required has an orange star. Any of the optionals will just be here without that little orange star. Then I'm going to go back to the editor section. And I'm going to collapse these one more time. I'm going to show you a couple things in the peer reference section. So these blue lines here are called groups. They each have their own edit button. And I'm going to use the one in peer reference as a little example. So I'm going to click on this blue line. I'm going to go to the right-hand side and click the edit button there. And there's a field that I really like called required count of items. And you can use this field. So if your organization requires 4 peer references, you could put the number 4 in there. There's also an option to add a description. If you add a description here, a little question mark is going to show up right next to that group. And when you hover over it, you and your provider will be able to see that description. So for example, in the peer reference section, we could add something like, please add 4 peer references. Or you could even detail it a little more, say something like peer reference number 1 should be a director, or peer reference 2 should be a medical director, or whatever the case is. You can detail all the information that you're requesting from your provider so they can view it there. So I'm going to hit save. And now I can see it's in red. It shows that there are 4 required items. And I've got that question mark. So I wrote, please add 4 peers, and you can hover over that and view it there. If I switch back to my viewer, or my viewer, it's taking just a second to load. But then I'll be able to view it from that as my provider would see it on this next page. I'm going to hit refresh. It seems like it's getting a little bit stuck there. So I'm going to go down to my peer references. And it's in red here. If I hover, I can see that note again. This is how your provider would view it. And on the right-hand side, 0 out of 4. So your provider would just hit add and fill in their 4 peer references. I'm going to go back to the editor one more time and show you documents and logins. Those are really nice features for collecting information from your providers, especially as they're onboarding. I'm going to collapse these and go down to the bottom. Takes just a second. So here's logins and documents. Right now, my logins is active, but at a group level, it is inactive. So I'm just going to use the green plus and enable it. And then from there, I can add different site names that I want to collect my provider's usernames and passwords from. So there's a couple common ones in here. I could remove them. So I'm going to remove the DA. I could remove these as I wanted to. And then you can also add them. I know CAQH is a really popular one. So all you would do is hit CAQH, provider sign in, select it from the drop down. And same thing with Pecos. I know Pecos is a really popular one. So you could just type in your keyword, select it, hit save. You get a little blue pop-up that says site names are saved successfully. And then your providers will be prompted to fill in their username and password for those sites. Same thing with the document section. So this is active right now, and we're requesting the birth certificate and the social. I could remove any of those if I wanted to. I can also add additional ones. And there's a really long drop down. So if you're looking for the CV, you could type in a keyword. You could add, I'll do driver's license, and so on. Hit save. Oops, I missed one. We'll hit save, and the documents will be requested. Thomas, do you have any questions about the customizing the data points?
I do. One that kind of just came to my mind is, let's say that I've already sent a few out and then I realized I forgot to add a document that's required. Now, what happens to those ones that I've already sent out? Can I alter those?
That's a really good question. So what Thomas is asking is, if you've already gone to that first page I went to, selected the email addresses and hit send, you can come back into this section and add your document, and it'll update in real time. If your provider has already gone through the onboarding invite and they've already completed it, then it wouldn't affect them. But anyone who's still working through it or hasn't even opened it yet, that additional document will populate and be requested from your provider.
Awesome. Thank you. One of my last questions for you is, how do I keep track of where everyone's at during onboarding? So let's say I send my invitations out to 18 or so providers. Where can I find the at a glance who's completed it and who hasn't yet?
All right, good question. So for that, I'm going to go back to my team page where I started. And there's a couple different ways that you can track where your providers are at. So the first place is our action items column. There's this little envelope button where you can also start or send your onboarding invite from. I'm going to hover over this question mark here, and the top 4 icons represent where your provider's at in the onboarding process. So when you first send it and your provider hasn't opened that email yet, it'll show that closed envelope, what it initially says when you log onto your team page. Once you've sent it and your provider opens that invite and claims their profile, that means then it'll show that accepted envelope, so it's an open envelope. Once they start filling in their data points, but they're not quite finished yet, it'll turn to a clear circle, and that's incomplete. And then finally, once they are done, all that data is added, you'll get a small blue check mark. So those are the 4 icons. You can always scroll through and view them here. However, there's also a really nice report that you can run that'll let you know where you're at in the onboarding process. So especially those of you with really big teams, you might not want to scroll through here and look at each icon to know where they're at. I'm going to navigate over to the reports dropdown and use this completed items report. It's one of our web reports. It's the third one down, completed items. And there's a column that's dedicated just to onboarding. So on the left-hand side, I have all the providers in my roster. And in the onboarding column, I have a filter and sort option where I could use new invitation. And that'll show me anyone who hasn't opened that invite yet. I could filter by accepted invitation. So anyone that had accepted it but hadn't started filling in data points would show up here. Incomplete. So these are my 3 providers that have started filling in the data but haven't quite finished yet. And you could use this information. Maybe you want to reach out to them, send them a quick email, ask them to, or just remind them to keep going. And then complete profile, you can see everyone who's completed that onboarding invite and all the data. Any other questions, Thomas?
I did have one. So let's say I have a provider that did sign out of their invitation before they completed it. How do they get back into their onboarding invitation?
So that's another really good question. So if your provider signs out, but they still have that original email that was sent through that message button, they can always revisit that link and open it from there. That's totally fine. But if they don't have that original email, maybe they deleted it, you can send them a link. As a coordinator, I'm just going to demo it. I'm going to go back to, so let's pretend in this scenario, it's Dr. Jennifer Parker who doesn't remember how to get back in and she no longer has the link. I'm going to click on her profile. I'm going to go back to summary and then edit button. And then right here from Jennifer Parker's profile, so this is the provider view, you can copy this link and send it over to your provider in an additional email if you'd like. And that way they can click on that link and they'll be able to access their profile and continue filling in data.
Awesome. That's kind of what I wanted to go over today. So I will turn it back over to Brandon to see if anybody's in the question and answer section.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Thomas. We do have a couple questions here for you, Leah. One of them being, I'll just read it verbatim. It says, in the completed reports, the completed items report, is there a way to determine when that provider completed the onboarding application?
I'm going to go back to the team page here and take a look at that report. So the completed item ones, oh, the date that they completed it.
Yeah, they're looking for the date. Yep.
Sorry, I'm
So
just
it's
trying to
not,
think it through.
it wouldn't be listed in this report here, but if you go to the message, you know, the message in the top right corner of that button, it should be able to tell you when it was completed in that little modal here.
In this section here.
It should. Oh, it shows you the sent date.
This will
Sorry.
show you the sent date. Once they claim their profile, they actually fall off of this list here. So you wouldn't end up sending it to them twice. That's a really good question though. I'm gonna check one more thing. Let's see. I'm gonna go back to my Jennifer Parker. You'll also get, let's see, you'll get a sent date here as well. I might have to follow up on the completed date.
It's there. Go to your profile, Leah, the profile card for your provider. Yeah.
Oh, it is there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the completed date will show up on the profile card. There's a sent date and then the date your provider completed it. Thank you, Brandon.
Yeah, that one stumped me too. I had to think about that one for a second.
Thanks. All right, what other questions are there?
We had another question that came up earlier, and it's back to the email that they can create. Is there any way they can change the logo on their email that appears?
So the logo that's attached to that email is the same as your team logo, whatever is here. If you did want to change that, you can send it over to support and they can change it, but you would not have access to change it yourself. They could do that on the back end.
So real quick, Leah, so I think we had that one confused with forms. If you have to change your logo with the forms feature, you have to go through our support team. But a full access coordinator does have access to change their team logo. If you click on your team's drop down real quick, Leah, and go to the very bottom of the list, not there,
Oops.
right there.
Right.
Oh no, I'm sorry. The drop. So cancel out of there. The drop down. I can see the different multiple teams. Yeah. And this says upload a logo. That's where you can upload a new logo if you want to change it. So if you select that, you pick the file, choose a file, and then you can crop it any way needed. So as a full access coordinator, you can change that logo. It would just be doing it that way.
Right. Thanks, Brandon.
Yeah. We had another question. Let me read it real quick. Hold on one second.
Okay.
Sorry, I forgot to mute myself. So this next question, this is a really good one, and it's really a workflow question. So the question is, the process that we're showing with the onboarding feature, does this help eliminate sending out a separate provider credentialing form for the initial onboarding? This, and then it says they complete all this and they would also complete a paper application. So it really depends on your organization's workflow, right? Like the onboarding feature is designed to replace whatever your current process is to onboard new providers. But if your organization still requires an actual signature, a signed form of an onboarding form you're using, at that point, that's where you'd want to send out an additional form to that provider via the forms feature once they completed the onboarding process. Did that make sense, Leah, how I described that, or no? Am I jumbling here?
No, that makes sense.
Did you want to elaborate that on one more time, how I described that?
All right, so let's see, so really, I guess because it's a work, so the answer is, just like Brandon said, it depends on you and your organization. So I guess and if I'm going off track, let me know. So you would send this onboarding invite, your providers would be filling in all that data, and maybe that data is all the information that you're requesting for that particular credentialing form or application. And then the next step would be to send it through the forms tab, have all that data pre-populate, and then you would receive that completed form back, and then you could forward it off to whatever organization was requesting that form.
Mhm.
Is that what okay.
You're exactly right, Leah. So think of the onboarding feature we're discussing today is a way for you to gather all the data for that provider you're onboarding. So that way, any additional forms that you're going to be sending out to that provider for signature, you would send it via our forms feature where Leah's cursor is right now. And those forms will be sent via DocuSign for that provider to complete electronically. But also in addition to that, because that provider you're onboarding, their data exists in their profile because you just got all their data, it would then pre-populate onto any additional forms you send out to them. So that's kind of the workflow and the idea behind it. So hopefully that answered your question.
And I'll add one more thing to it, just on a very high level overview, you could think of using that onboarding feature as a way to gather all the data to set yourself and your organization up for success in the future when you're using that forms tab, because you've already got all the information that you need to fill out those applications, and the forms tab is what takes the data from these profiles and pre-populates it. So you're just setting yourself up for success by using onboarding.
Perfect.
What other questions do we have?
We had another one come in. I'm just reading it real quick. Okay, so the question, so currently the question came in that they're onboarding they're adding new providers right now, trying to gather their data. Is there a report that will show what is needed without sending the invite? So is there like an auditing their profile? Like what are they missing? Is there a report they can run, Leah, to show what data is missing that profile they need?
There's a couple ways you can do that. I like to use the providers report. So I just use this drop down. I'm going all the way down to providers here. When you run this, It'll give you lots and lots of different fields. Actually, I'll run it here. I'm just going to run it for our training environment providers right here. It's a really large Excel spreadsheet. Oh, just a sec. It's on my other monitor. Can you all see that now?
Not
no?
yet. I don't think you're
Okay.
showing the right screen.
Just one sec. Okay. Here. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this report, the providers report, is a good way to check. It's almost like you can use it as an audit system to see what's filled in for your different providers. You can also apply any of your basic Excel workflows. So if I wanted to just drop a filter on all of my different columns, one example would be I could look and see which providers have their driver's license filled in, or their driver's license state, and then their driver's license number. So I could use this to filter by, I could do unselect all, and then just pick the blanks. And then I would, okay. And now these are the only providers on my team that do not have driver's license expiration dates entered into their field. So I would know that I need to go to these different providers and fill that in. And you could run this report as many times as you want. Maybe you would want to do it like make it part of your workflow where you run it every 2 weeks or once a month, just to make sure that all your provider profiles are still up to date and that you have all their updated information. Or like another good use case would be phone number, making sure you've got like the correct phone number in each of your provider profiles. You could use this to filter and sort and see whose information you have. Does that answer that question?
Yeah. And another way too, I think that would be good to show these guys. It's almost like a tip when you're auditing these profiles. So like, let's say, let's pick on your profile, Leah. You just completed the onboarding feature. Do you want to show them how you can check the boxes off, like when they're auditing it and when you're in the profile? Do you want to show them that? That might be helpful too, to show everybody that.
From within this profile?
Yeah, or yeah. It doesn't matter which one, but yeah.
Do you mean from like, just to make sure I'm going to the right place, like over from the viewer?
Oh
Or
no,
the
I'm
editor,
sorry.
excuse
So
me?
no. So go back. Sorry, go back to the provider's
Okay.
profile.
Okay, sorry.
There's no, you're good. So there's a way, you guys, just open up either one. It doesn't matter. Yeah. What I like to point out. So notice when you're looking at these different sections here in the profile, every section has a box, right? And some boxes are checked and some are not. What it is that check mark can be misleading. That does not indicate that section has been completed as far as your organization standards go. What that check mark means is that any field required by Modio in that section, if they've been filled out, it generates it. So a way to kind of combat that and kind of audit your profiles once a provider's completed the onboarding application is if you ignore the check mark, but if you right click on whatever section you're auditing and select that little field that pops up, it'll highlight that box white for you just like that. And that could be considered like your own internal check mark that's saying, hey, for Dr. Leah Sanborn, we got her education and training done, we're good. And then practice employers done, we're good. And you can kind of use that as a visual when you're looking at the profile that you've already completed auditing those sections. So that could be a little tool that you can use. And this really works well in conjunction with our tracking feature, which we don't, have time to cover today, but you can also use that in conjunction with the tracking feature as well. So as far as auditing profiles, that's another little tip you guys can use as you're going through doing that. So hopefully that was helpful.
Yep. And to uncheck it, you can also right click and just unverify. I'll just clear those. Thanks, Brandon.
Yeah. We had another question come in. We may have covered this. Let me know if we did, but it says, my provider says they didn't receive the invitation. What should I do?
Oh, that's a good one. So sometimes those invites, because it's coming from an unknown, like a sender that your provider doesn't usually receive emails from, it could end up in their spam or their junk folder. First thing I would do is have them check there. If they can't find it there, we have had IT teams that need to whitelist or add that email to like a safe sender list within your organization. So if you are having consistent problems, maybe the whitelist or the safe sender list would be a good option there.
Awesome, thank you. So we have a few more that came popping in. These are good questions. This next one is, I'll just read. So it says, so they sent out the onboarding invitation, but they forgot to make an item required. Can they edit that invitation that's already been sent out to make it required?
Yep, you can. You can edit it just the way you did originally. So you go into any of your provider profiles here. Does it matter which one? I'll click there. Again, I'm going to go to summary. Being a little bit laggy. Edit button. And then you could make the changes from the editor page there. If your provider has already completed the onboarding invite, at that point they wouldn't see those changes. But if you like just sent it, they haven't opened it yet, or they're not finished yet, then those changes will apply to that already sent invitation.
Awesome. So it does it real time. Cool.
Real time. Mm-hmm.
There's a couple more that came through. I got to read them real quick. I think we covered this one already. So they were asking, can we have more than one onboarding template within one team?
So you can only have one onboarding template per team. And the onboarding template, again, is that original message that you'd be sending from this message option here. Only one template per team. You can make edits and changes to it though, and send it more than once. So one example would be, maybe you want to send a certain message to all of the doctors on your team, or the MDs on your team. Turn the message on, add the green, use the green plus sign, hit send. You could go in and edit it then. And then maybe you wanted to send the next one to all the PAs. You could make some small edits and changes, select the PAs using the green plus signs and send it them. Their welcome message will look different. However, the requested data points would still remain the same for everyone. If you are making edits and changes that way, I would just use caution, make sure you review it and make sure it says exactly what you want it to say before sending it to that selected provider.
Awesome. It looks like a couple more also came in. This one is actually a really good question. This is back in the onboarding viewer, Leah. Why is the social security number and the driver's license field not visible in the onboarding viewer?
So both of those fields are encrypted. I'm going to show you, let's see, I'm going to use this provider again. And in the personal info section here, there's nothing filled in, but the driver's license section is encrypted, as well as that social security number. If there was data in either of these sections, you guys might have noticed it'll look like little stars all the way across, and you have to unlock it if you're going to view or make edits or changes to those two sections. And that's a reflection of that encryption, that extra level of security. So that's why it looks that way.
Awesome. And then last question here, and this has to do with attaching a document in the onboarding feature. So there's an option where when you're going to send off the onboarding invitation, you can include an attachment. Can we do multiple attachments on that, or what? Is there any limitations on that?
So there is a limitation on this choose file. You can only do one document, just one document for your provider. And I do like to highlight that document should be a read-only document. So maybe like an information or a welcome, an HR packet for your providers to review and keep on file. This particular attachment is not integrated with DocuSign. So it is not something that could be signed or filled out and returned. It's different from our forms feature. It's just an information packet that you could choose to use to send something to your providers as they onboard.
Awesome. That is all the questions that have come in so far. We still have a few minutes, you guys. If you have any more questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A button down there at the bottom of your screen of Zoom. We'll wait a few minutes, see if any other questions come in. But no, this has been super helpful. Thank you, Leah. I've even learned some things here, so good stuff.
All right. Yeah, if there's any other questions, go ahead and put them in the QA. We can get them answered.
I guess while we wait, we can also show them too, Lee, if you want to show them our onboarding tip guides that we have, and also the different videos, training videos as well.
Yeah, of course. So we've got the support page and the Modio U page support here. Everyone's got access to this, lots of information. There are tip guides. There's this one here on just on onboarding. And then down below, there's a tip guide on provider onboarding. And that's where you can see the screenshots and kind of workflow that your provider would have or would go through. Whereas this onboarding is more geared towards coordinators. So what your all's workflow is, you can view that there. Super helpful. In addition, we do have our Modio U tab here. This is full of lots and lots of pre-recorded videos. They're a little bit on the longer side. I'd say each one's about 40, 45 minutes. And you can scroll through here. Here's one, onboarding invitation. That's similar to the data or the information that we covered today. Again, I think there might be another one down here. New provider onboarding. It's a mini one. It's a little bit shorter, but you can always use that for additional information. And we're going to be posting this recorded session as well. So that'll be up here within the next couple days.
Awesome. Lee, we actually did have some questions come in here while you were letting us know of that. So really good questions here. One of them was, actually, it's going to be V2 related. Is the onboarding feature available in V2 or is it just available in V1 currently?
Brandon, you're our V2 person. Do you want to? Okay.
Yeah. So this is a good question. Currently, so we're developing our platform into what we call OneView version 2, which has not been fully developed yet and available to our customer base. But currently with V2, currently with the onboarding feature we discussed today, that is only available to us in the version 1 platform of OneView currently. But in future, this feature will be added in the V2 version of OneView. There's no ETA on it yet, but I do know in the future it will be added. So that's a really good question, Charlene. And then we had another question come in as well. And the question was, which is a really good one. So what are the advantages of collecting the provider's data via the onboarding feature versus using the forms feature with the forms already available to send out to your provider? So what are the advantages of using the onboarding feature?
Oh, good question. So one of the advantages of using this onboarding feature is that you are, just as soon as your provider's on board and they are on your roster, send them the invite, request all those different data points, have them add all the data here. And that way in the future, when you are using forms, your providers are already set up for success, because when those forms auto-populate with all that requested data, it's already here. And that's that kind of key takeaway. A complete provider profile will allow you to quickly and accurately complete those forms, send them over to your providers, have them sign it, and it'll all come back. Are there any other questions there?
No, that is all the questions that we've got so far, Lee. I think we're good.
All right. If there's anything else? And I want to add to that last question that was asked regarding why using the onboarding feature. And I guess another key takeaway would be like the forms are not filled out manually. It's not manually entered, if at all possible. It's coming directly from those provider profiles. So that's why you would want the onboarding to be completed before you're using forms.
Yeah, that's a good point that confuses some folks sometimes, is when you do utilize the forms feature, you send them out. If the provider enters any data via DocuSign on that form and they complete it, that data does not get pushed into OneView. That only happens in the onboarding feature we discussed today. So that's a really good point to make as well, to not be confused on.
Thanks.
But yeah, I think that's it, Lee. I think that's all the questions. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining. And for those of you that took the poll, we appreciate that too.
All right, guys. Well, thanks again for joining us today. We hope you have a great rest of your week, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Bye.